daily driver right now. It's a 2003 Subaru WRX. Last video was working on the turbo on this thing. I told you guys I'd make a video just sort of going over like basic everything I've done to this car, you know, whatever. I haven't done much to this car, I'll be honest. It's pretty stock, but you know, I just want to keep it reliable for a daily driver. I don't want to go too crazy with it. Maybe one day. So it's a 2003 WRX. It's got 86,000 miles. It's a wagon. I bought it just over a year ago. Had 54,000 miles on it. Let's see. First thing. What is the first thing I did to this thing? I think I put an exhaust on it first. It's got a turbo XS downpipe, mid pipe, and then the Pro Drive round tip axle back. So it's not too loud, but it's, you know, if I'm just cruising on the highway, it's not droney or anything. But if I open it up, it definitely makes some noise, which is good. It's perfect for a daily driver, basically. It's on BC Racing BR coilovers, which in my, you know, they're sort of on the cheaper end. They're better than Racelands, but they're, you know, they're not high-end coilovers, so they sort of get a bad rap sometimes. But I've been driving on them for over 20,000 miles now and haven't had a single problem. They perform really well. They're definitely an upgrade over the stock suspension, especially because the stock suspension in these WRXs is just so squishy and, you know, not good. Well, you know, this car isn't going to be going off-road anymore at all, but that's not what I want it for. I like driving on roads, so it's perfect. I also picked up what are these wheels? Volk Racing Trophy F-Zeros. I got those off Craigslist for $400, which was the steal of the century because they're forged aluminum wheels, and I picked them up for $400 for the set. They're 18 by 8, so I'm running 225 40/18 tires on them. They're Dunlop SP Sport Max 2, I don't know, something like that. Whatever comes on the new STIs OEM. I somehow ended up with those tires, but be swapping them out sometime soon, the wheels and the tires, for my winter set. I haven't come across a set of wheels yet that I know I want to run. Last winter I ran stock 08 through 10 WRX wheels and Blizzaks, and I was happy with the tires and the wheels looked alright, but I want something a little more aggressive for this winter, something that looks a little bit better. So what else have I done to this thing? Did sedan front end conversion. So sedan fenders, they're off a JDM STI. So they got little side markers on the back, and then I've just got some haggard looking front bumper that I picked up on Craigslist again. Basically all the parts I've bought on this car used. I don't buy anything new. It's just sort of pointless to me when I can get it for so much cheaper used. Let me think. I got this STI steering wheel out of an 06 STI. I picked that up for like $20. STI 5-speed shift knob, carboy short throw shifter. Let's see, I know I'm missing a bunch of things. Oh, I've got the, who makes this gauge pod and 3 crappy gauges up there, but you know, what's dumb is one's a vacuum gauge and one's a boost gauge. The boost gauge goes from 0 to 35 psi, and the vacuum goes from, oh geez, the backlight doesn't even work in it, 30 inches mercury to 0. So as the vacuum gauge pins out, then the boost gauge starts going, instead of just having one gauge that has them both together. It's, I don't know, I bought it like that, so I'm just waiting until I pick up some new gauges, but for now it works. I guess it's just a really dumb setup. Besides that, I think it's pretty stock, just because, you know, it does have only 86,000 miles on it. Eventually I'll probably upgrade the turbo. I don't know what I want to go with, maybe a VF39 or something, because it's just the stock TD04 in there. But yeah, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to break it and these EJ205s that come in this, you know, the WRXs are pretty weak, and same with the 5-speed gearboxes. So I just, you know, I want to keep a reliable daily driver, and this makes plenty of power to, you know, for me to have fun and stuff, and it handles plenty well. But eventually I'll go more power on it. I'm just, you know, putting all my crazy into the Porsche for now, just because I can. I totally feel like I'm forgetting something else that I've done to this thing. I always do this. Who knows? If I remember, I'll put it in. But yeah, I'm heading to the scrapyard. There's a few things I want to pick up there. I want to look for a radiator, possibly, maybe for the Porsche. I've got a radiator, but I'm not sure if I'm completely happy with it. My girlfriend's car is wrecked on these two doors, so I want to see if I can find some of those. It's a 96 Avalon. And I guess we'll see whatever else I can find. It's always fun going to the scrapyard and seeing what you can, you know, seeing what you see. There's some weird cars there sometimes. Last time I think I saw a Fiat X19, which is, I mean, something that you don't ever see. But yeah, I guess we'll just see what we see and just cruise on over there. Oh yeah, I remembered something. I also have V2 Cobb access port. Just picked it up on Craigslist used. All it does is basically gives you an over-the-shelf tune. Yeah. Knew I was forgetting something. Oh yeah, and my head unit, but does that count as a mod? I feel like, why would you have a stock head unit in a 2003 car? It just makes you hate your life. And I also have a 4-channel amplifier underneath the driver's seat, powering all the speakers. I think I have infinities in the front, and then, oh geez, what do I have? I have something in the back, something else, something different. And then over here I've got a monoblock amplifier powering single 12-inch subwoofer in the back, and also have I think it's a 1 farad capacitor underneath my seat, underneath the passenger seat under there, but that thing is sort of useless. It just, you know, it doesn't really work as it's supposed to, even though, I don't know, I just overpower it all the time, basically. It's the problem. Listen to my music too loud. But yeah, now I think that's everything. Besides that, I want to go full STI interior. I want to go, you know, blue carpet, you know, like the blue and black suede seats out of the STIs, the JD STIs. I want to get the door panels and everything. One day I want to go full wide body flared with this thing. I'd like to run like 305s on it, which would just be ridiculous, and then, you know, build up the engine and everything to match all that. But I don't have any crazy plans for the super near future, just because I want this car to get me through the rest of my college career, and it's broken down recently. It hasn't been the most reliable thing, if I'm gonna be honest. I owned it the first probably year and 3 months I've owned this. It didn't break a single time. Nothing broke on it. Perfectly reliable, and as I should expect it to, because it, you know, it's not an old car. I mean, it's not that new, but it only had, you know, has less than 100,000 miles on it. It should be pretty mint. But got my timing belt done at like 82,000 miles, so like 4,000 miles ago. And then a week after I got my timing belt done, and I just got my timing belt done, just preventative maintenance. A week after my timing belt gets done, my radiator decides to pop, which isn't that uncommon of a problem, and it isn't that big of a deal. It's just, in these cars, they've got the plastic intakes on the radiator, and sometimes they let go, and, you know, they're weak, so they just break. So, just bought another OEM radiator, cheap, from a local guy in my super club. And then what happened after that? I think a week later after that, I was driving, and pull up to a stoplight, and smoke just scoop. And I'm just like, great. And I immediately knew exactly what it was. It was because for a long time, if I sit and idle for a long time, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, smoke will start pouring out of my exhaust pretty bad. And then to fix it, all I got to do is give it a few revs and it stops smoking. I thought it might have been a PCV valve for a while, replaced the PCV valve. Turns out, since I replaced the PCV valve and I didn't fix it, turned out it was most likely the turbo oil seal, which happens. I mean, they tend to go sometimes in these cars. So I knew I had to replace the turbo. So I bought a newly rebuilt turbo off a Subaru shop and replaced it. And I figured at the same time I would replace the up pipe since I was in there, because it still had the factory up pipe in it. And if you don't know, these cars come with an up pipe with the catalytic converter in them, which is really bad because say you drive it too hard and that cat gets too hot because it's right off the freaking like it's right off the heads, it's literally right off the exhaust manifold. Cat gets too hot, it breaks up into pieces, goes into your turbo shatters into a million pieces, and then goes into your intake. So that's really bad news, basically. It's a little loose. There we go. So figured I'd replace that at the time so that I don't have to deal with that down the road and that explodes and grenades my entire engine. So start to replace the up pipe. Well, if anyone's ever done an up pipe on these cars and they haven't pulled the entire exhaust manifold down, I didn't because I didn't want to deal with that. I should have in hindsight, but it's a huge pain in the ass to try to get the up pipe out. So I finally get it out, and then I decide to replace it with the catted up pipe, or the catless up pipe. It's just an STI OEM up pipe. Put it in there, bolt everything back together, put it all back together, right? No big deal. Drive it around. Well, after I drive it around for a day, I realized the turbo oil drain tube, which is, I replaced the gasket that is attached to that tube in my previous video, but the tube itself had slipped off of that lower pipe that it goes onto, so most of the oil was still draining back into the sump, but some of my oil was actually just like draining onto the ground and like onto my cross member. So I obviously had to fix that. So I pulled the turbo out, and as I'm undoing one of the bolts off of the up pipe that attaches the turbo to the up pipe, for some reason that bolt, it wasn't cross-threaded or anything, which doesn't make sense. I don't know if a little like piece of slag or something ended up in the threads, and when I was unbolting it, it just binded up and sheared the freaking stud off, which wouldn't be that big of a problem typically, because replacing studs is pretty easy. Like I did it, like the turbo didn't have any studs in it, so I pulled the studs out of my old turbo, put them in the new turbo, like no big deal, easy. So I'm like, whatever, I'll pull the up pipe out. It wasn't going to be that hard to pull out because I already had the brackets out and everything. I'm like, I'll just pull it out, won't take long. Pull out the up pipe, decide to replace the stud. How do you replace a stud? Double nut it, so you know, you put the first nut on and then put the second nut on, back them onto each other, and then yank the stud out that way. So I tried to do that, and it just strips the threads on the stud. I'm like, great. I'm like, I guess I'm just gonna have to weld a nut to the stud, and spin it off. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Pain in the ass, but whatever. You know, it's gonna come off, no big deal. Get a nut on there, weld it on. You know, it penetrates really well. It is stuck on there. Start twisting. It moves maybe a millimeter. The stud does, and then all of a sudden the stud shears again, but not at the weld, below, lower on the stud, so it's even worse now. There's even less of the stud poking out. I end up doing that until the stud is completely freaking gone, just flush with the flange, so I have nothing to work with anymore. I'm going insane, so I finally brought it to an exhaust shop and just had them, they just, you know, blew it out with a plasma cutter, finally. So now it's just a nut and a bolt in there instead of a stud, because it was a huge freaking ordeal trying to get that thing out of there. But then I finally got that in there. Then the CV axle on that side decides to break. So I replaced the CV axle. Just another thing decides to break in the middle of all this. And then I'm driving around for a few days, and then I realized that the gasket must have been bad on the turbo oil drain, the one that I ended up replacing in that last video. So I'm just putting it off because it wasn't leaking that bad, but I'm like, I need to replace it still, because you know, I don't want my car leaking and smoking all the time. But it wasn't that bad, so I still was driving on it for a little while. I didn't want to have to freaking yank the turbo again in like the same week. So I'm driving around at work one day, you know, parking in the morning, 12-hour shift, come back out, get in my car, start it up, try to turn the steering wheel to get out of my parking spot, you know, so I can back out. And my steering is so heavy, no power steering. So I start to turn the wheel, and you know, it does the annoying squeaking thing that it does whenever you're out of fluid. So I back the car out a little bit, look under the car, all the power steering fluid is gone. Oh, so again, another thing. Well, it turned out, I don't know why it happened to happen at the same time, just, you know, when it rains and storms, I guess. But luckily, I thought the steering rack was done. I was just going to convert it to an 04 STI rack so I could get the quicker steering ratio. But it turned out just the fittings came loose for some reason. It's weird that they just did it at the same time as everything else. I figured the rack just, you know, finally died or whatever, but luckily it didn't, so you didn't have to spend any money. Just tightened up those fittings and top it off with fluid, and it was good. And then I ended up next week or so replacing that gasket on the turbo, and since then it's been fine. It's been like a couple weeks, and it should be fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the car itself. It's just these little issues that keep popping up, and they're just, you know, being annoying. And I mean, it happens sometimes, but you know, besides that, the car's been perfectly reliable. You know, I mean, I've driven it all the way across the country. Drove it to California last November and didn't skip a beat. Drive it all the, you know, I'd romp on this thing all the time, so I'm surprised it has only broken that much, if I'm going to be honest. But yeah, that's sort of the history of this car. Yeah, it's a great car though. Subarus are great daily drivers, I think, like WRXs. I wouldn't, you know, some people go crazy on these stock, you know, bottom ends, and you can't, because they just can't take it. So I think where mine is at is perfect for a daily driver. You know, it's probably making, I don't know, 260, 280-ish at the crank, probably 280 at the crank. And that's enough for me for a daily. And it's reliable, and it's fun, and I'm not gonna get in too much trouble. told me I could choose between the pickup truck that my dad had because he was getting a new car, which was an '06 Silverado, or our '92 Jeep. And I, like an idiot, chose the pickup truck. I don't know why. I don't know. I wish I would have chosen the Jeep in hindsight. I don't know if I would have still had it, but I definitely would have had it for a while, and it would have been a lot of fun. But whatever, you know. So I had that truck for a little while, and then not long, that truck wasn't my kind of car. So I ended up getting an '03 Subaru Legacy, which in those are just naturally aspirated. I mean, it was a great car. It was an automatic.